Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister. This Monday, the 16th of December, day 437 of this October the 7th war. In the last few minutes, sirens sounded here in central Israel. A missile was launched from Yemen. The missile was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force before it crossed into Israeli territory. Sirens were sounded due to the possibility of falling shrapnel from the interception. Just so you know, so I can share with you precisely what happens. The air raid siren went off. We have 1.5 minutes to get to shelter. Myself and my colleagues did just that. And that means not just me here working in Israel, but every single person living in this area. So that's millions of people, children, mums, dads, old people having to run to shelter because of this Yemeni missile. Yemenis and the Houthis in particular should understand very, very well, as the Houthis understand, and as Hezbollah understand very well, as Hamas understand very well, that Israel's patience is not inexhaustible. So a couple of points from me, and then we'll get straight to your questions. Firstly, let me start by drawing your attention to the comments the Prime Minister made last night about changes in our region on Syria. Israel has no interest in conflict with Syria. Our default position is, of course, for neighborly relations, but our policy on Syria will reflect the reality on the ground. Let's be clear. For decades now, Syria has been an active enemy of the State of Israel. Syria has attacked Israel on repeated occasions. Iran and Hezbollah have embedded themselves in Syria and attacked us from Syria. Iran armed Hezbollah through Syria. This will not reoccur. The government has directed the IDF to do two things. Number one, to thwart potential threats from Syria, and number two, prevent terrorists from taking control close to our border. Israel is committed to preventing the rearming of Hezbollah. Next, an operational update. Yesterday in Gaza, our armed forces conducted an intelligence-led precise strike on Hamas terrorists inside Command and Control Center that was previously the UNRWA Sheikh Jamil School, also known as the Ahmad Abdul Aziz School, in the humanitarian zone in Khan Yunis. Hamas systematically operate where Gazans live. Yes, of course, Israel took steps to save Gazan lives, precise munitions, precise aerial surveillance, and additional intelligence, but Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad systematically violate international law by exploiting the Gazan lives as human shields. Next, in Judea and Samaria, also called the West Bank, since the start of this war, more than 6,000 wanted people have been arrested, with 2,350 connected with Hamas. Last night, I can tell you that in Jericho, our forces confiscated more than 1 million shekels of terrorist funding. Elsewhere, other terrorist funds were seized, as well as guns and ammunitions confiscated. And I can also share with you that in the last day, earlier this morning actually, another UAV was launched from Yemen, and that too was intercepted by the Israeli Navy missile boat in the Mediterranean. The UAV was intercepted prior to crossing into Israeli territory. As we have said to you before, the Houthis will understand, as Hezbollah understands in Lebanon, as Hamas understand in Gaza, that Israel's patience is not inexhaustible. And finally, to Kogat, our latest figures in the last 24 hours, 254 humanitarian aid trucks went into Gaza, 42 via the Erez crossing, 212 via Kerem Shalom crossing. In terms of collection, 75 trucks were collected from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom by international organizations, but still 700 trucks worth of aid are waiting for collection. A convoy of 14 aid trucks entered Gaza via Route 96 yesterday, and 6 tankers of gas for critical infrastructure also went in. 2 ambulances and 1 bus for medical needs went into northern Gaza yesterday. In addition, perhaps I can share with you that Cindy McCain, the chair of the World Food Programme, gave some incorrect figures about aid going into Gaza. Just to perhaps enlighten the World Food Programme about the correct figures, the most updated information, which was not shared perhaps with Cindy McCain. So let me give you the opportunity of hearing the correct figures. These are the facts. During the month of November, 847 World Food Programme trucks were coordinated into Gaza. Let me repeat that. Not the 2 or 3 trucks which Cindy McCain talked about, but 847 World Food Programme trucks were coordinated into Gaza. These trucks entered Gaza through crossings from Israel. Indeed, over the last week alone, 1,316 humanitarian aid trucks, including food, including water, including medical supplies, including shelter, have entered Gaza, and 1,318 trucks were distributed within Gaza to humanitarian warehouses and shelters in coordination with aid organizations and the international community. Since the start of December, over 16 million pounds of flour have entered Gaza for bakeries in Gaza. As we always say, the IDF and COGAT acts in accordance with international law. Hamas want to starve their own people, but Israel gets the food in. Okay, first question here I can see here is from Joel Pollock. Can I also, just before we start the questions, apologise to you for the late starting of this briefing due to the Yemeni missile, the Houthi missile, which was fired at us just a few moments ago. First question here is from Joel Pollock at Breitbart News. World Food Programme Director Cindy McCain alleged yesterday on CBS News that Israel is targeting humanitarian aid workers and that it only allows 2 trucks of aid into Gaza from the World Food Programme in November. Can you kindly respond to these allegations? Thank you for that question, Joel. I think I've addressed that quite comprehensively in our briefing just now. You're right, Cindy McCain is mistaken. You know, we here in Israel have the utmost respect for Senator John McCain. He was a war hero not only in the US, but also understood Israel's unique positions and the challenges we face here in Israel as the only democracy in hundreds of miles in any direction. So it is all the more upsetting to hear Cindy McCain, the chair of the World Food Programme, giving some incorrect figures about the aid going in. As I mentioned to you in our briefing, in terms of the World Food Programme, the correct figures are as follows. 847 trucks went in for the World Food Programme in November. Now that's a big gap between 2 trucks and 847 trucks. So we can only suggest, as COGAT has, that perhaps the correct figures are not being given to Cindy McCain. And second question is from Joel Pollock. Can you explain the special circumstances for the Prime Minister's postponed testimony tomorrow? Thank you for that question, Joel. We've got nothing to add on that. Question from David Clement from the News Forum. Does the Prime Minister's office comment about the Henry Jackson Society report in the Telegraph stating that the civilian death toll in Gaza are inflated? Thank you for that question, David. We have, on numerous occasions, questioned 2 things. Number one, why media takes the Hamas figures, the Hamas health ministry figures on face value. Hamas, an organization that murdered 1,200 of our citizens, mostly civilians, that committed the most appalling atrocities, that Hamas that are willing to fight to the last Gazan, Hamas that are not only upset they're not upset that Gazans have been killed, they only wish more Gazans have been killed, that Hamas that are prepared to fight to the last Gazan, we do of course believe that the figures which they use are incorrect. We here in Israel see harm caused to civilians as a tragedy, while Hamas, of course, sees harm caused to civilians as a strategy. Hamas systematically violates international law and commits a war crime by using civilian infrastructure and the population of Gaza as a human shield for their terrorist activities. Now, this data from the information ministry in Gaza, it clearly operates as a media arm for Hamas. It systematically reports inflated figures on casualties, and it cannot be trusted. The best example of this I can give you is that Sinwar himself is listed on the Gazan health ministry figures of dead civilians in Gaza. So the Prime Minister has said that we believe that 20,000 Hamas terrorists have been killed. Within these figures, there are many, many mistakes. Firstly, that deaths from natural causes inside Gaza are also included in these figures, that these figures are routinely inflated, they are not true, and the experts, John Spencer from West Point, the world expert on urban warfare, he has said that Israel has hit the gold standard when it comes to civilian to terrorist ratio. No one has managed to get civilians out of harm's way as Israel has when targeting these terrorists. The same is true for other military experts as well. For instance, Mr. Kemp, the former British head of armed forces in Afghanistan, or Andrew Fox, another British senior military officer. He too has highlighted that these figures cannot be trusted. Okay, that seems to be the last question. So, that's the last question. So thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back again for another briefing. In the meantime, you can catch us in the usual way. And thank you for joining us. Please do stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.